Is one of the high-flying FAANG stocks going to experience decline in the AI era? And if so, which one? Are AI transformations going to be as collectively unsuccessful as the digital transformation of years past? And is AI actually going to make us faster or slower in 2024? Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Know-How from Knownwell, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. As always, I'm joined by Knownwell CEO David DeWolf, Chief Product Officer Mohan Rao, and Chief Strategy Officer Pete Buer. For this special episode of the show, we have brought Pete Buer into the conversation with Mohan and David for us all to share our hottest takes on AI and business. This is definitely one you're not going to want to miss. David, Mohan, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited for this episode.
Good.
Great. How are you?
I am good. I am also so excited about this episode. So excited that I brought in the whole gang for this discussion. So, Pete, also welcome to the party.
Thank you, Courtney. It's great to be here.
She finally let you be part of the club and didn't
I don't have to
push you
sit
off to the end of the show, Pete. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't have to sit at the kids' table anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, I don't know what you're talking about. You and I are at that table together. We're having a blast. They're the ones that don't get to come and
oftentimes the adults, they enjoy the alcohol, but they wish they could have the coloring book. So, you know.
Well, today I wanted to do something a little different than normal. And I wanted to get your hot take on AI. And if you're listening, and maybe even for some people that are on this episode right now, you may not be familiar with the term hot take. So I am going to give you the very renowned Urban Dictionary definition of hot take. And what do I mean by hot take? It's an opinion that's likely to cause controversy or is unpopular. And I am hoping that there are some unpopular opinions that come out of this discussion around AI, and we get a little, back and forth. One of my all-time favorite episodes is when David and Mohan disagreed spiritually about ROI.
I remember. It's a fond memory.
Yeah,
Yes.
That was one of my worst memories, actually. I can't believe I used that word.
We're never going to let it die.
Such a good debate until I said that.
Yes. So hot takes. I want your AI hot takes today. And unlike hot ones, where you go from the mildest wing to the hottest wing, we're actually going to go in reverse. I do not know what your hot takes are, but I have heard from our producer that, David, your hot take is
Really?
fire.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty excited about
I'm thinking, let's go ahead and get that over with and see if we're spiritually in alignment or not, and then go from there.
All right. So I am actually excited about this, Courtney, because I did have to look up what a hot take is. And that controversial piece that you talked about, I think was the key for me. Is it's not just latest events. It's not just a bold impression or projection. It's about controversy. And so I started thinking about what's actually going on. And the real data point that hit me was just several days ago, about a week and a half ago, NVIDIA passed both Amazon and Google to become the fourth most valuable company in the world. And I think that's a pretty important event. And when I step back and look at it, I think this means that it is the end of the FAANG stocks. For a long time, we have been talking about Facebook and Amazon, Netflix, Google, Apple, right? Those are the FAANG stocks, and they have been the bellwether of technology. And I think NVIDIA coming up means it's actually the end of that. And by the end of that, here's what I mean. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to look back and one of those won't even be relevant anymore. Now, you think that's a bold prediction. I'm going to go and double down on it. The one that's not going to be relevant, I think, is Amazon. I think this is the beginning of the end of Amazon, and here's why. Number one, I think Google and Microsoft are absolutely excelling and doing exceptionally well in the era of AI, especially as they push into the enterprise. I think their business models are fundamentally oriented towards being able to excel in the age of AI in business models, as opposed to Amazon, who has built their business on retail. I also think both of them have been through leadership transitions, moving away from their founders for a long enough period of time to have learned how to institutionalize Amazon innovation, whereas Amazon is still figuring out how to transition leadership from Bezos, and they're learning how to do that. I think you see GCP and Azure starting to gain more market share and come back against what has been a very dominant AWS, which has been producing the profits that have allowed Amazon to thrive. All of those things are being eroded. And finally, I will say, I think in this economy, as much as ever, people and purpose matter. And Amazon for quite some time has had a reputation around how they treat their people and around what their culture is. And in a world where these big behemoths are asking for people to trust them with their data and with this scary thing called artificial intelligence, I think all of those things collide to mean that as we look forward in 3 to 5 years, we're going to look back and say, wow, Amazon was a stalwart for a period of time. They hit the most valuable company in the world, but they got surpassed by NVIDIA, and now they're not even part of the equation anymore. This is the beginning of the end of Amazon.
So you're basically saying Amazon is going to be our Sears and Roebuck.
Yeah, and just like Sears, it's going to take a very, very long time. But undoubtedly, this is the beginning of the end. It's going to start its decline and no longer be part of the bellwether club that has been the FAANG Stocks. It's going to be surpassed by new technology leaders that are coming up in this era of AI.
I'm so disappointed the answer wasn't Facebook. Darn.
That's what you were rooting for?
Yeah, like, can't David make Facebook go away?
Yeah, me too. I'm like, Amazon? I don't know that that's the one I was hoping for.
I think David is onto something here that's accurate. The way I see it is slightly different. It's not that Amazon is going to disappear. First of all, we need to distinguish between Amazon and AWS, which David did. The retail side of it continues to be a behemoth, and I think they're continuing to innovate there. The question is on AWS and what's the future of AWS. I think what's happening is that AWS is moving up the disruption curve where it will get disrupted. That I agree to that extent, because, I'm sure AWS will deny this, but ultimately they are becoming an enterprise company, enterprise infrastructure, enterprise platform company, and moving away from their roots of supporting entrepreneurial startups, right? So that much is clear. And you hear about things like they focus on accounts that are minimum of $2 million spent per year, that sort of thing. And they will become more in the category of IBM and Oracle and that category, but I don't think they go away.
You just destroyed my confidence, Mohan. I was thinking I had really put some controversy on the table. I didn't expect everybody to agree.
I guess I also wonder about the retail piece of the business. Does it go away? Or does it sort of become a utility? It starts to look more like the post office than, exciting retail.
I think this is a really interesting hot take. Nobody is spiritually unaligned here. It's we're interested to see and maybe a little nervous about some implications of it. But when it comes to our listeners and executives in their companies, is there anything that we take away from this hot take or things that we can apply practically?
I think there's a couple levels that come to my mind. The first one is simply the reminder that anybody, even the stalwarts, even the most valuable companies in the world, can be disrupted, right? And regardless of that if that turns out to be the right projection or not, there will be winners and there will be losers in how this AI world plays out. And I think being on your toes and being ready to solve the innovator's dilemma and overcome that is a an important reminder. I also, you know what it reminds me of, several months ago when Sam Altman was taken out of OpenAI and then put back, there was all this question about, who's going to rely on OpenAI. And it's really proven to be a little bit of a speed bump for them. There wasn't this max exodus of people moving away from OpenAI and using ChatGPT and that type of thing. But I do think there has been a little bit of a tendency to believe that Amazon was the new IBM in a different way. Like it was just safe to use them and Amazon Web Services, AWS, as your cloud provider. And I think that shift is happening as well. I see more and more companies embracing GCP. I think if you look at one of the reasons I've predicted this, GCP and Azure in the age of AI, I think are doing a better job of navigating it. And so the shift in the vendor landscape, I think, is another interesting one. And thinking about what that means for your business and how it trickles through and making sure your CIO is thinking about that and how it plays in this AI world. Mohan, you may have more thoughts on that technically of how that plays out and why it matters, but I just think it's a trend people should be thinking of and paying attention to.
Yeah, if you're a small, innovative company, if you're a mid-market company, there are other options. And there are many of us who have grown up in the AWS world since 2009, 10, right? There are other options that you should look at. But if you're a large enterprise, primarily running large workloads, right? So if you have a big application that runs, AWS is going to continue to be fine. So for large workloads, for large enterprise applications, but for everybody else, there are other options around. And especially in today's age where do you start with cloud or do you start with your AI partner, whether you're LLM provider? That is a real question of where is the entry point into how you architect your products and systems.
All right. Well, bad news. Our Amazon sponsorship just fell through, but I'd love to hear Pete, Mohan, what do you got on hot takes? What's your hot take on AI right now?
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. There is a perception, because we're in the early days of AI here, we're 15 months out from when ChatGPT was publicly released, that AI is going to lift all sectors, right? It's just, there's a lot of euphoria here about everybody is going to do great. I think the reality is it will positively affect only some companies and not other companies. The result is there's going to be a large emerging AI divide between companies. And here's the reason why I say that. As opposed to other technologies like cloud and SaaS, which really impacted positively all the companies in a sector, most companies are built from a simplify, standardize, automate. There's not a whole lot of intelligence within the process steps. If you think about construction, right? It's like the old Penn tennis ball commercial. You've seen one, you've seen it all sort of thing. And their goal is to set the process in such a way that there is predictability in outcome. Those types of companies that are efficient will not benefit from AI as much as the one that are thinking thoughtful within the steps. And my prediction is, or my hot take is that this AI divide will continue to grow between companies that are thoughtful in how they have established the company and the process and the value chain within the company versus companies that have gone for repeatability and standardization.
All right. So I'm going to have to argue with you a little bit here, Mohan, because I think you wove a lot of nuance in there that takes your hot take and waters it down a little bit so it's not as bold.
Is nuance same as very thoughtful?
You can frame it that way if you want. You can frame it that way. Listen, here's the deal. There's going to be winners and losers, you're right. Like every time innovation happens, there are people that use it more than others. But you also said there will be some that don't benefit from it. And I don't care if you're in construction or not, right? If you're in construction, there are ways you can run your business better. There is knowledge work in your business. And so I think a rising tide lifts all boats. I think it's like electricity, right? Are there some industries that lost market share or lost some profit? Yeah, yes, there are. But overall, as a society, it benefited us. Overall, within industries, every industry could get more productive, more efficient, better, and those types of things. And so while I agree there will be some that benefit more, I'm not sure that there will be organizations, there'll be organizations because some leaders won't lead through it, but there won't be industries, broadly speaking, that are just left out of the cold and untouched by it. And so I think it's only when you add that nuance in there that hot take sticks and stays true.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that to some extent, right? So here we're talking about the AI divide, right? That is my central point. If you're in construction and it helps you write better marketing copy, yes, I mean, that is a good thing, but that is not where 95% of the costs are, right? So it's really a disproportional impact depending on how you've set up the company.
Yeah. I'm tempted to reference the Gartner distinction between everyday AI and game-changing AI. I think everyone has the opportunity to benefit from everyday AI, but maybe game-changing shifts according to industry opportunity.
Yeah, that's an interesting frame for sure. I wonder if some of the improvements around the edges, let's call it that, right? Marketing copy for a construction company. I wonder if some of that will fundamentally change industries in ways we don't foresee, right? Will an industry like construction be totally turned on its head in a way that we can't even imagine right now? I suspect there will be some industries like that. And then I will suspect that there are others that just kind of improve the way every business will improve because now there are lights on and you know, we can work in the dark or whatever.
Yeah. No, I think if there's more information in an industry, it could be any industry. I think those are absolutely cases where AI will have a positive effect. But sometimes in technology, what we do is we think technology is the only industry that matters. The reality is technology is 10% of GDP, right? And the world and the bubbles that we live in feels like it's 90% of GDP, which is not true.
Right. Yeah, you have huge sectors. You have the service industries, right? You have the education sector. You have, defense. You have very, very large industries that actually move economies. I'm curious, double down on your hot take here. Pick your industries. Who besides technology, besides the obvious, are going to be the big winners and who are going to be the big, quote, losers?
I think if you just think of what are like the big industries out there, right? So in a GDP of $20+ trillion. So if you think about the $3 trillion or bigger, professional business services is at the top of the list, or at least in the top tier. I think that's going to be positively affected through the AI revolution. Financial services will be. I would argue even healthcare would be. Maybe education will be below the line, right? So agriculture maybe somewhere middle of the line. I mean, these are like the big ones that are components that make up the whole GDP.
If you're enjoying these hot takes, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. You're going to get the latest and greatest in what's happening in AI and business and how it can help you in yours. If you haven't already, go to knownwell.com to subscribe today. All right, Pete Buer. Am I saving the best for last?
You are definitely saving the last for last. So I'd like to start with a date that I want you guys to remember. I declared on this episode, March 20th, first day of spring. A momentous occasion will occur that has been discussed previously on this podcast. Any guesses?
Gosh, I've got no idea. March 20th is around the spring solstice, right? So tell me.
Travis Kelce proposes to Taylor Swift. And watch what happens in the markets that day. It'll be a thing to remember.
Is that the hot take?
That's my hot take. We ended early. It worked out great. All right, so here's my my hot take. 90% of major AI transformation projects will fail.
Whoa.
That's my starting point. And I'll justify it since we all kind of did that, right? So an easy way for me to do it is to back up and reference the McKinsey data that 70% of major digital transformation projects fail. And I think the tail of the tape will only be worse for the near term on AI transformation projects for some of the same reasons that made digital go in the wrong direction. When McKinsey breaks down the rationale, number one, targets were set poorly, not based on facts. Change management is typically done poorly, no engagement of the target community in the why. They're executed poorly, especially when it comes to hard decisions around people. Managers are always slow and time is your enemy. And they fail to sustain performance after that transformation period is over. And if you just reflect the realities of AI on those, like, inability to set targets, you guys argued about ROI, and how difficult it is to think about on one of the prior episodes. And I think so often, especially in middle market, companies are working backwards from the EBITDA target that they need to achieve or the cost savings goal they need to convince the board that they can they can execute on, as opposed to anything grounded in the real implications of AI on how work gets done. Change management, componentry. We know from the readiness assessment work that talent is the last thing that any company is thinking about right now. Totally. It's all about getting your data and technology straightened out and what's the strategic implications of AI. And at some point, right, our people's jobs are going to change and we need to think about that, but we haven't done any work on it just yet. And I think jobs will change much more fundamentally even than they did during digital, right? The benefits of AI go to who I am as a professional and what I've made my bones on in my job day in and day out. And that's all, like, not all, but a lot of that's going out the window. And I'm going to have to reinvent myself in the contours of the business that I'm part of. On execution and on performance culture, we are who we are as businesses. Some are good, some are not, most are not, especially in, for instance, change management and the people stuff and so forth. So I don't imagine we'll be any better for some reason on those measures with AI transformation than we were with digital. So that's my rationale. Punchline. So what? Like, AI is strategically important and it is going to change your business. And if you're not on top of it and driving some things in a direction, then you will suffer even worse than if you fail to meet the objectives of your AI transformation effort. So get on the horse and start galloping and just take it as seriously as humanly possible so as to have your best chance of being in the 10 instead of the 90. That would be my lesson for anyone listening to this particular rant.
How similar do you think that AI transformation is going to be to digital transformation, Mohan? Will it follow the same path? Are there lessons we can learn from the failure of the 70% and apply to AI transformation? Or will it be a fundamentally different thing, kind of beyond just normal change management?
I think it builds on it, but there are some more complex components to the AI transformation, right? So if you've not tackled the digital transformation already or in the process of, it's hard to imagine an AI transformation. So in that sense, it builds on it. But the people impact and the work design impacts are going to be massive with AI. That was not much there with the digital revolution that we'll have to consider and bring that into equation, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting. I mean, Pete and you both make up a great point that we just think as a an industry as a whole at change management, right? Period. No matter what you're changing, right? Most organizations do. Most organizations think about the smart before they think about the healthy parts of business, right? Yet it is proven over and over again that a healthy organization with a strong culture that has people that trust each other can navigate these changes and out execute their competition, right? Like there's so much data that piles up on that side. Maybe I just want to believe that we are beings that can learn the lessons from the past, but forever we've been talking about failed IT projects and then 70% failed digital transformation projects. I don't want to believe that 90% of AI is going to fail, but you're right. Like that is history. That's where we've been. What can and should we be learning? Besides, we have to do better at managing people in change management. Is there something that we can build upon? And I don't know. Maybe I could quibble that it's only going to be 87%, but it resonates with me that we don't seem to navigate these changes well. And a lot of them do fail for a lot of reasons you describe. And here's what's interesting is AI is going to solve a lot of problems, but it's going to help us be smarter, not healthier. And this is a health problem. This is a human management problem. This is a human capital problem. This is a culture problem. This is a change management, all of those squishy things. There was just an article in the New York Times this past weekend, I think, last week sometime, about how AI is going to make our jobs more human. And it was talking about something that I've been saying for years now, which is it's time for a resurgence of the humanities, right? And I think the industry is starting to realize this, and it goes back to exactly what you're talking about, is we have underserved ourselves in terms of the education of our people, in terms of the way we compensate people for their skills, in terms of everything. We undervalue what really matters, which is the human elements, right? The quote soft skills, as this article called it, that we think of as soft, which means it's not important. They're the hardest things in the world, right? To create a truly healthy culture is really, really hard work and takes tons of courage. It's not soft in my book. And I think that's what you're talking to, and that's what you're pointing to, Pete. And even though I think debate is the best thing for this podcast, I can't think of a good debate to take the opposite position. I agree.
Yeah.
I was tempted to say 100% because then I figured if it ended up being 98, I'd still be like remembered and mostly right. Yeah. But I think the point you're making, David, is the right and beautiful one. And it's about turning our thinking on our ear. The squishy, to borrow the term that you used, kind of goes from being the last thing that you worry about to the first thing that matters and the point, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's got to be some of the lens that we bring to where this work goes and the impact that it has not only on business but on society and so forth. And we just know that that's not the way businesses are in the mode of thinking, right. And so it is going to be hard and messy and painful.
So, Courtney, I'm waiting for not only your hot take, but you to opine on these. Or what do you think? 90%? Does that resonate with you?
90%. I find myself thinking about the specifics on what types of AI projects you're thinking of when you say 90%. There's so many different levels of AI application in business. Obviously, I don't think you're talking about, hey, I'm using ChatGPT to write a email. No. You're talking about enterprise level. And, where is the line for where these type of projects land when you're using those stats?
So the observation or the hot take is about transformation level work. So like fundamentally changing products, customers, employees in significant ways. And sure, there's stuff along the way. And in fact, in another podcast, we talked about the fact that, you get your reps on everyday AI that help to make you smarter as you succeed increasingly at the small changes in order to get yourself to a place where you have a better shot at being in the 10% on the big ones. So yeah, but you're right. There's a hierarchy to magnitude of change that we're talking about.
Another frame I've heard talked about a lot is there are a lot of organizations, I think Microsoft is one of them, that's touting there's two big impacts. One is, productivity, and they're talking about Copilot helping with the execution altitude that we've talked about on this podcast, and then productization. I would argue there's another in the middle. We've talked a lot about the operational aspects that we can drive, and so I would say it's productivity, operations, and then productization. I think it's the latter two. It's the operational transformation, the productization that are truly transformative. And maybe you could even insert in there a little bit of the strategy altitude that we've talked about. There will be plenty of transformation projects trying to help make organizations smarter in terms of strategic trade-offs, right? But I think it's that productivity that you're talking to, Courtney, that, gosh, I hope 90% don't fail when we just try to start using ChatGPT to write a job description, right? Like that would be a poor state of humanity if we're that bad. But
I will give y'all my hot take. If you're ready, brace yourselves. So I actually had several. I was like, what do I choose? Do I talk about how I think OpenAI will be our MySpace of the current day? Do I talk about how I actually still think ChatGPT is a terrible copywriter? But I'm actually going to land on this year in 2024. I think that a lot of the productivity AI applications will actually make us slower rather than faster. That
very interesting.
Is my hot take.
When you say that, is there a specific tool or two in your mind that you've used that you believe slow you down?
No, actually, there are not specific tools. I think part of the problem is that the specific tools that you even turn to for a specific thing are ever changing, constantly evolving. You've got to go test it. I mean, I'm talking to all of other marketers. We're talking about like, hey, is your team using X for Y? And have you thought about Z? And then you got to go test it out yourself and realize like, this is terrible. No, this doesn't work, and to find the gem that you're hoping, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that's perfect for your use case. And at the same time, keep track of the tests that you've run because the technology is constantly evolving. And just because the test didn't work this week, it may work next month when Gemini improves to the next version or, apply that across all the different applications. So I think this year is going to be really interesting especially in enterprise, can we get enough value in the midst of the evolution and all of the testing that is going to happen in our own use cases?
And so, Courtney, is there a pattern to that effect? Like early days when everything feels like trial and figure stuff out, we're going to have as much in our way as enabling us. But then once patterns emerge in the best tools for the best categories of activity, the thing sort of settles itself out and then big returns start to follow.
Exactly. I think we'll get to a place where it's very common practice where X is the premier product to use for writing copy, that we start to get certain areas where the winner is starting to emerge against the other ones versus right now there's so many different design tools or video tools. Even, the four of us are sending things all the time. Like, hey, have you used Perplexity? Is that even the name of it? There's so many things. And I've talked on the podcast before about, my concern even for us just to metabolize all the new technologies coming. But I think just on a practical level, it may not be as productive this year as I think it will be next year.
I love the thought behind that because what you're doing is you're zooming out, right? So often our discussions focus on that productivity piece and it's the discrete work versus the macro picture, right? If you're doing a job 30% faster, but to prepare to do that job, you had to go through 7 different tools that took, X many more hours. Like you're losing sight of what's important in the overall and pointing that out. I think that is a really good reminder for executives and a key takeaway, especially as these questions of ROI start to come up, right? Understand the curve that Pete just walked through, and understand that part of what you're doing right now, the return, is coming up to speed on the knowledge and the education so that you can do the transformation that's going to fail 90% of the time more effectively when it comes along, because you've done that homework. You've learned through that process. And I think baking that into your ROI equation and understanding that's what we're going through on both of those points is a fabulous takeaway for folks to think about.
Okay, team. I loved these hot takes, some really good spicy material, but we wouldn't be a podcast about AI if we didn't get AI itself to give us its own hot take. Here's the prompt we gave Gemini. We asked Gemini to give us some controversial takes about business and AI. And here's what it said. Buckle up for some truly spicy takes. Ethics are a marketing ploy. This may be the spiciest of all. Responsible AI is just a tagline for companies to appear trustworthy. True innovation will prioritize profit over ethics, creating a race to the bottom. I feel like there should be like sizzling noises right now.
Yeah. Sure hope AI is being ironic.
I mean, I think the thing about hot takes, it's kind of like jokes, right? The funniest jokes are the ones that have an element of truth to them. And I think what resonates about this is I think there's a lot of that is truth, right? When we look about things like the word responsibility, right? Go back, forget AI right now, go back to social responsibility. A lot of it is political. A lot of it is for the purposes of looking good, for branding, for marketing. I think here's the secret to me. Here's what's really, really important in this day and age. One of the skills for the next generation that is going to be essential is the ability to read authenticity, to know what is true, to know what is real. That is a human thing, to read the emotions, the conscience, the meaning, the belief behind it, not just the words themselves. And I think as we navigate, knowing who is saying what they're saying because it's PR and who is saying what they're saying because they truly believe it. And you have to look at actions for that. You have to look at proof points. So I think that hot take is pretty darn hot, but not in the sense of horribly controversial. I think there's an element of truth there. I think there are some really good people in the world that genuinely care about doing the right thing and want to have ethical AI and want to be responsible, but you got to look for the actions, not the words.
David, Pete, Mohan, thank you for bringing your spicy takes to the episode. For everybody listening, I hope there was a lot of fruit and things that you can think about applying to your own business, things that you can start to wrestle with and see if you agree or disagree. We will have some posts about this on LinkedIn. So if you want to weigh in, if you think we're totally wrong, please let us know. We would love to know if you spiritually align or not. Everybody listening is going to have to go back and listen to the episode on ROI. Otherwise, you're never going to get
that episode.
You're never going to get the inside jokes on this podcast. All right, team. Thank you as always.
So much fun. Hey, Pete, we got to have you back. That was great.
Yeah. Well, you know where to find me.
Nice to see you all. Courtney, thanks for highlighting that episode.
and
Spiritually aligned.
And which way it worked out.
Thanks as always for listening and watching. Don't forget to give us a review on your favorite podcast player of choice. And we'd really appreciate it if you would leave us a review or share it with another executive. At the end of every episode, we like to get AI to weigh in on the episode. So today, hey Claude, welcome back to the show. How are you feeling about these hot takes? And do you want to add one yourself?
Dude, I'm telling you, all these companies trying to slap AI on everything are just chasing hype. They'd be better off focusing on the basics and using AI carefully where it really adds value.
Okay, yeah, that is a hot take, Claude. You may get the spiciest one of all. And now you're in the know. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week with more headlines, roundtable discussions, and interviews with AI experts.